In the few seconds it takes to watch this intro, hundreds more people will be pushed closer to starvation. Right now, on a planet that produces more than enough food to feed every single person, an unprecedented number of people are facing acute hunger. In the 53 countries tracked by the Global Report on Food Crises, that number is over 295 million people, and it has tripled since 2016. For many, this is a daily battle for survival, but this is no longer just a story about hunger. This is a story about conflict. We're on the verge of a global catastrophe, but it's not because of a lack of food. The reason is that food is no longer just about sustenance. It has become a weapon of war. New front lines are being drawn, not over ideology or territory, but in a hidden, global conflict over dwindling resources. A glass of water, a bag of grain, a patch of fertile land. How did we get here? And as nations are pushed to the breaking point, where will the first shots of these new resource wars be fired? The link between hunger and conflict isn't new, but the scale we're seeing today is off the charts. For decades, we've seen hunger as a tragic byproduct of war. Now, the equation is flipping. Severe food insecurity is becoming a direct trigger for new international conflicts and a powerful accelerant for existing ones. It's a vicious feedback loop. Conflict destroys food systems, and collapsing food systems breed more conflict. The 2025 Global Report on Food Crises paints a grim picture. It identifies conflict as the main driver of acute food insecurity in 20 countries, including places that have become synonymous with suffering: Sudan, Gaza, South Sudan, Haiti, and Mali. In these hotspots, violence shatters the very foundations of survival. It obliterates farms and infrastructure, forces millions from their homes, and turns getting food into a life-threatening gamble. Today, the vast majority of the world's forcibly displaced people live in countries already grappling with food crises, a staggering testament to this deadly cycle. But this isn't just about active war zones. Three powerful forces are converging to create a perfect storm. First, the relentless march of climate change. Extreme weather events, from crippling droughts in the Horn of Africa to devastating floods in Pakistan and West Africa, are becoming more frequent and severe, wiping out harvests and pushing millions into food poverty. Second, severe economic shocks. The fallout from the pandemic, paired with spiraling inflation and currency devaluation, has sent food prices soaring, putting basic staples beyond the reach of millions, especially in countries that depend on imports. And third, a factor that turns a crisis into a catastrophe: a staggering decline in humanitarian aid. Just as the need reaches a fever pitch, funding is plummeting. As of mid-2025, a fraction of the required global humanitarian funding has been received, marking a massive drop from previous years. Major donors are cutting support, forcing agencies to scale back aid and make impossible choices, essentially deciding who gets to eat and who is left to starve. This convergence of conflict, climate, and economic collapse, all amplified by a funding crisis, has created a tinderbox. The question is no longer if it will ignite new wars, but where it's already happening. The front lines of these new conflicts aren't always obvious. They're in besieged cities, in remote villages fighting over drying wells, and in crowded refugee camps where desperation boils over into violence. To understand this new reality, we have to look at the anatomy of these man-made famines. To see the weaponization of hunger in its most brutal form, look no further than Sudan. The country is now home to the world's worst humanitarian crisis. Since the devastating civil war erupted, it has triggered the largest displacement crisis on the planet. But beyond the battlefield, a quieter, more insidious war is being waged, a war of starvation. In 2024, famine was officially confirmed in parts of the country, the first such declaration anywhere in the world in years. This was not an act of nature, this was a man-made disaster. After more than 2 years of war, over 25 million people are suffering from acute food insecurity. In besieged cities like El Fasher, the capital of North Darfur, the situation is apocalyptic. The city has been under siege for over a year, with major roads blocked, cutting off humanitarian access and trapping hundreds of thousands of civilians. The price of basic food in El Fasher has skyrocketed to levels that are 8 times higher than elsewhere in the country, an impossible sum for families who have lost everything. Reports from the ground are harrowing. People are resorting to eating animal fodder, wild herbs, and even dirt to survive. Malnutrition is rampant, with extremely high rates among children, who are described as being just skin and bones. This isn't just a side effect of the war, it's a deliberate tactic. Both sides of the conflict have been accused of using hunger as a weapon, blocking aid convoys and looting supplies. The World Food Program has trucks full of food ready to go, but they are denied safe passage. This deliberate obstruction is a clear violation of international law, turning food into a tool of control and subjugation. The crisis in Sudan is a chilling blueprint for how modern conflicts can be fought not just with bullets and bombs, but through the systematic denial of food. It shows how a nation's breadbasket can be turned into a graveyard, and how internal collapse can create a vortex of instability that threatens to pull the entire region down with it. The influx of refugees is already straining resources in neighboring countries like Chad and South Sudan, planting the seeds for future tensions. If Sudan shows how conflict can create famine, the situation in the Gaza Strip reveals how a siege can orchestrate starvation on a mass scale. The level of acute food insecurity is nearly absolute, with famine unfolding, driven by a catastrophic collapse of the food, health, and sanitation systems. The statistics tell a story of a system pushed past its breaking point. Before the conflict, Gaza was heavily reliant on food imports. Now, with access severely restricted, the aid flowing in is just a trickle of what's needed. What little aid does enter is often impossible to distribute safely because of ongoing fighting and a breakdown of public order. The result is a landscape of utter desperation. Malnutrition, especially among children, has reached the highest levels ever recorded there. In recent months, thousands of children have been identified with acute malnutrition, with many suffering from the most life-threatening form. These aren't just numbers. These are children whose bodies are wasting away. Specialized centers to treat them are overwhelmed and running out of fuel and supplies. The health ministry in Gaza has reported that dozens of people, including many children, have officially died from malnutrition and dehydration, though experts agree the true toll is far higher. This crisis is compounded by the near-total destruction of local food production. Farmland has been damaged, bakeries have been destroyed or have no fuel, and fishing is impossible. The social fabric is collapsing as the fear of starvation intensifies, with reports of armed groups looting aid trucks and civilians killed, trying to access what little food is available. It is a crisis where even having money offers no escape, as markets are empty. The situation in Gaza is a stark warning of what happens when a population is cut off from the outside world. It illustrates how food access is inextricably linked to political and military strategy. The use of sieges and blockades that prevent life-saving aid from reaching civilians isn't just a humanitarian issue. It's a profound threat to regional and global stability, creating deep-seated grievances that can fuel conflict for generations. The images from Sudan and Gaza are devastating, and the scale of this global crisis can feel overwhelming. But here's the crucial thing to understand. We are not facing a global shortage of food. The world still produces enough to feed everyone. The problem isn't scarcity, it's distribution, access, and most critically, political will. A path out of this crisis exists, but it requires a radical shift in our approach. First and most urgent, we have to break the vicious cycle of conflict and hunger. This requires relentless diplomatic pressure to end the fighting and secure unimpeded humanitarian access. Aid is not a political pawn. Safe corridors for food convoys, the lifting of sieges, and safety guarantees for aid workers are non-negotiable first steps. Organizations on the ground like the World Food Program and Doctors Without Borders are doing heroic work, but they can't succeed if they are blocked by checkpoints and gunfire. Second, we must dramatically ramp up investment in resilient, sustainable food systems, especially in the most vulnerable regions. This means supporting smallholder farmers with climate-smart agriculture to help them adapt to new weather patterns. It means investing in water management, diversifying crops to be more drought-resistant, and improving infrastructure to reduce food loss. Innovations can play a role, but they must be accessible and affordable for the communities that need them most. Empowering local communities, especially women farmers, is key to lasting food security. Third, the global community must reverse the catastrophic decline in humanitarian funding. It is a profound moral and strategic failure to cut aid at a time of record need. Wealthy nations must honor their commitments and recognize that funding humanitarian aid isn't charity. It's a critical investment in global stability. An unstable world, beset by famine and conflict, is a threat to everyone. Economic policies must also be part of the solution, including tackling trade restrictions that block food flows and providing financial support to low-income countries struggling with debt and inflation. Ultimately, these solutions require a change in perspective. We have to see food security not as a separate issue, but as a cornerstone of international peace and security. A world where people don't know where their next meal is coming from is a world ripe for conflict. The challenges are immense, but so is our capacity for change. The story of our future isn't written yet. We can choose to stand by as hunger becomes the world's leading catalyst for war, or we can take collective action to build a more just and food-secure planet. If you found this analysis valuable, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. It helps us continue to shed light on these critical global issues. More importantly, you can be part of the solution. You're not helpless. Start by getting informed and raising your voice. Share this video with your networks. In the description below, we've provided links to organizations like the World Food Program, Oxfam, and UNICEF. They are on the front lines providing life-saving aid in places like Sudan, Gaza, and the Sahel. If you're able, consider supporting their work. Your contribution, no matter the size, can provide a malnourished child with therapeutic food or a displaced family with a ration of grain. And contact your elected officials. Urge them to support robust funding for international humanitarian aid and to champion diplomatic efforts that prioritize peace and secure access for aid workers. Ask them what your government is doing to address the root causes of this crisis. What do you think are the most critical steps the international community should take? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's start a conversation. The front lines of future wars may not be drawn over ideology, but over a glass of water and a loaf of bread. The choice to prevent that future is ours to make, and the time to act is now.